welcome back to another episode of Animation Pilgrimage, where Sean and I watch every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I am Tennille.
And I'm Sean. And wow, you did it correct.
Thank you.
Hey, we just watched...
We're only 100 episodes in or something like that?
Oh no, we are, aren't we?
Well...
No.
We've got to get at least 2 years in. I don't think we're quite that far.
No, but we're probably around 75 movies, something like that. I don't know. Now I'm super curious.
We've watched a lot of movies.
All right, you know what? Boom. That's the number of movies we've watched so far for Animation Pilgrimage. Makes you stop and think. Oh,
so we're
man.
here in 1968. We finally moved on to 1968. Okay. Finally moved on to 1968, and we are here with Toy Animations, The World of Hans Christian Andersen, which I'm going to have to type that title a million times in the process of editing and getting assets around, and I'm already just shoot me. But here we are.
This is the second movie here in the 60s that is about Hans Christian Andersen as a child, as he learns to imagine stories and tell them to other people.
At least this one doesn't do the crime that The Daydreamer did, where they're like, he was a fantastic storyteller, not because of his imagination, but because someone else literally told him all the stories. I mean, The Daydreamer, I guess, didn't really do that. No. But it feels like that's always a thing. Is that, they'll take some... I've seen this trope a million times, where it's some famous person... They actually got all their ideas from a mythical creature or something like that. Or they went on these adventures.
I mean, that's what The Daydreamer did.
And then they tell the
He
story.
went on all these adventures in his imagination.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't do that. In fact, he doesn't really do anything. Quite literally nothing happens to the main character.
Nothing to do with Hans Christian Andersen for 90% of the movie? Yeah.
Okay, well, should we get into the plot?
Go for it.
Okay, so...
I mean, I think this should be pretty easy to summarize, because not much happens here.
Mm-hmm. So, the Sandman starts living in the clock tower of the local church, where Hans likes to hang out with his 4 mice, 2 cats, and random girl friends.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor of the town is a rich guy, and he has a bratty daughter. And there's an
opera going on in town.
There's an opera going on in town, and Hans really wants to go to the opera, but he's poor because he's the shoemaker's son. But there's a shoemaking competition, and once you know it, the Sandman breaks his shoe and goes to his dad, who's the only one that's not taking part in this special shoemaking competition.
Uh-huh.
Because he doesn't have the money to buy red materials for the red shoes that need to be made for this, whatever. Either way, he gets his shoes fixed, but because the Sandman is a mythical creature and doesn't have money, he just gives him red leather.
Mm-hmm.
So he can take part in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Hans's best friend is a young girl, and she lives with her grandma, and they are super poor.
Well, they're also, I think the grandma's recently widowed, right? So it's
Is she?
They mentioned something along the lines of, they're having trouble, they can't keep their business, or the business isn't doing well. And maybe I just assumed she was widowed or something, but essentially, their house basically gets foreclosed and they have to live out on the streets.
Oh, yeah, that definitely happens, because they hella poor.
Yeah. But this this all treated as like some
side plot that's not even that important.
B plot?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
And it's like, wait, hold on. That seems a lot more important than Hans wanting to go to the
opera.
Freaking opera. But all right.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of which, Hans' dad enters the shoemaking competition. Definitely has the best shoes, but the bratty daughter is like, you know what? I'm going to take these for myself, and someone else is going to win. Because the winning pair of shoes is going to be taken to the princess who lives elsewhere, or something.
This whole movie's very real in the fact that, like...
Everyone is horrible.
Rich people get away with these awful things.
And the poor people can't do anything.
Zero consequences, but this is not a focus of the story. It's just kind of like a truth laid bare.
It's like oh yeah, she's
this
horrible.
Is just how the world works, kids.
She just does it. So
the poor people and like Hans and the animals and stuff, they're like, that's not fair. And then they immediately realize that they can't do anything about it.
So they just forget about it.
Oh, well, I guess let's keep trying to figure out a way to go to the opera.
Yeah, we'll go to the opera by doing a bunch of random side jobs that are just comic relief elements.
Yeah.
Oh, there is so much comic relief stuff in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the comic relief is why the grandma and little girl get foreclosed in the first place.
Is it?
Yeah, because the cat was going to get a blanket for their family, for the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And he, for some reason, decides to go to the mayor's house.
To get a blanket.
Get a blanket, and also gets, like, a smaller blanket that has, like, the insignia of the mayor on it. So they assume that the old lady stole the blanket.
Right.
So they go to their house and trash it, and, like, she falls over and, like, I don't know, breaks her hip. She's fallen and cannot get up, and she's... Then they live in a windmill out on the river, and Grandma's, like, mortally wounded or something. So the little girl has taken to selling matches in the street in the middle of winter.
Ah! Of all the stories, why?
Of all of Hans Christian Andersen stories, why did we go with this one?
I mean, it's a really popular one, that's why.
Yeah. Either way, Hans finally gets money to go see the stupid opera, and he runs into his friend who is selling matches. He's like, you know what, here, you take this. See, this is more important. Get your grandma some medicine with this nickel. And you're just like, oh no, this isn't good. Either way, in the opera, the bratty daughter of the mayor is wearing the red shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Which are apparently magically enchanted.
By the Sandman?
By the Sandman, who he mentions earlier, like, don't wear them or else something bad will happen. Or something. I don't understand. Either way, the music starts up, and then she is forced to dance non-stop, and she cannot control it.
I'm guessing this is some other reference to a Hans Christian Andersen story. And I remember a Hans Christian Andersen story where there's a shoemaker who needs to make a pair of red shoes, but I don't remember the red shoes forcing someone to dance. So maybe that's from another story.
I don't know. She's dancing and flying around and people are screaming and terrified, and she eventually gets saved by the Sandman, who then unravels the shoes back into a single piece of leather again and just takes it back.
And then the Sandman just kind of disappears.
Oh, he goes to Hans, is like, you are born to be a storyteller, so tell us a story. And Hans is like, this isn't the time.
Well, yeah, because everyone leaves the opera because they're like, oh no, this girl is dancing and she's possessed or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a whole huge chase scene where they're trying to save her, and like the opera's been ruined, and so everyone's just kind of hanging out outside the opera house, and they're like, oh.
Well, no, everyone's gone except for one little kid who's like, I wanted to see the opera. And so the Sandman's like, tell him a story. You can tell him a story and make him happy. So Hans, thinking of recent events, decides to tell him the story of the little match girl.
Yeah, that'll cheer him up.
For anyone who's not aware, The little match girl is a poor, destitute child who is shoeless, lives in the streets. It's the middle of winter, and she's trying to sell matches to people, and no one buys them. So she starts lighting the matches to keep warm and seeing visions of wonderful things like a fire and a plate or a table filled
feast.
with delicious food, and her grandma who is dead, and a Christmas tree covered in candles, and she eventually just burns all of her matches out and goes to heaven with her grandma. In the morning, the townspeople find her dead, lifeless body in an alley, and she is frozen.
It's not even one of those stories that's like left up to interpretation, like
whether she just got teleported.
Did she die?
No, she's dead.
She's fucking dead.
She's real dead. And the townspeople are like, oh, she must have died happy because she's got a smile on her face. Like, are you kidding me? She died of exposure. She didn't die happy.
Yeah.
This is not a happy story. Why did you go with this story, Hans?
I mean, all of Hans Christian Andersen's stories are kind of
morbid and dark.
like, I don't know if there is a happy one. Maybe the Snow Queen ends on a happy note?
I don't know.
I haven't actually read most of the stories, but I know most of them don't end well.
Either way, he ends the story.
Especially if you're the female protagonist.
You're dead.
Yeah,
you're just dead.
You're dead.
Either way, he finishes the story. And the crowd has come back, and they cheer, and like, you're amazing, and we need to go take you to a different place where you can learn proper learning and become a real storyteller. Also, the mayor's a good guy now, and he's going to take care of dead grandma and destitute child or something. And everyone lives happily ever after, because Hans Christian Andersen told a story about a dead
little girl that died.
The end.
The end. Also, there's like Tom and Jerry shorts in the middle of this, peppered throughout with like
the
dog and the cat.
There's a large mouse and 3 tiny mice, and then a sleazy cat who's trying to get with the female cat. Mm-hmm. And then there's just the bulldog character, and lots of hijinks ensue with all of that. And that's the majority of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, most of the movie is just this side plot stuff that doesn't matter. Hans is only in the movie for like 15 minutes, it feels like.
Yeah. So, The World of Hans Christian Andersen is kind of a misleading title, because it's like...
He's not the focus of the movie.
Yeah.
They try to pretend he is, but it's like, no, it's the story of mouse and cat.
I mean, when I hear the title, The World of Hans Christian Andersen, like, I immediately think of a story where it's just like a world where all these stories exist together.
And, like, they're interacting with each other.
Right. And maybe that's
the
like my...
greatest crossover of all time!
Like, maybe that's my 90s kids' brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, that kind of thing was pretty popular when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Is seeing, like, ooh, these are all these things together.
I mean, that's also very popular right now.
Yeah, but this isn't a very, like, it still wants to pretend it's the real world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's almost a biography on Hans Christian Andersen, even though, like, it's not remotely... Like,
it doesn't tell you anything about him.
It doesn't tell you... Well, and I don't think it's based in, like, any historical fact, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, overall, this movie is fine, but it's very clearly just a pandering time sink for children.
Right.
Which is not big marks in my book.
No.
By any means.
No, and the very real problem of, like, I don't know, there's a lot of real issues in this film that maybe now, like, a 60s audience would be like, oh, poor people, how sad, but now in, like, 2019, we're like, oh god, I relate.
Like, I relate to the poor people, and, like,
I relate
too
hard to this, and I can't take myself out of this.
The systemic oppression is, very real and not cool.
Yeah, just like, wow, this is a downer.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even realize it.
Yeah. So, the animation exists. It's not like very stellar.
It's pretty
serviceable.
on par with like a normal toy animation film, but
For
there's no.
this I don't know. This feels worse than some of their.
Yeah,
some
well,
of
that's
their
what I
others.
mean, like par. Like most of the toy animation films, we have segments where it's like the animation's really good or the animation's just kind of like subpar.
Okay.
And all the animation in this movie is about subpar. There's not any real standout moments.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
It's like there's a couple of dream sequences, but I don't really care about any of them. The character design is lackluster. It's just it exists and it's not super memorable.
Mm-hmm. And there's not much to say about the production of this one either.
Mm-hmm.
It was just another one that was, translated and brought over to the West.
And that was it.
Yeah. There's just really not much to say about this.
Okay.
And I feel like I've already said most of my thoughts. Oh, sorry. Most of my thoughts on this one. So, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Next time, though, we should have something that a lot of you guys are really interested in hearing our thoughts on. Because next time, we
live in copyrighted music. Copyrighted music. Copyrighted music. Oh boy! It's the Beatles movie, Yellow Submarine.
Yeah. See you guys next time.